The moment you realize your perfect life is a sham hits you like a truck. One day, you're on cloud nine, celebrating the birth of your first kid, thinking you've got it all. A loving wife, a newborn, a picture perfect life. Then, bam, reality slaps you in the face. Hard. It started off like any other night. Me, trying to be the supportive husband, taking care of the little one so my wife could catch some much needed sleep. Or so I thought. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand, lighting up the darkroom. Curiosity got the better of me. I wish it hadn't. The messages I saw flipped my world upside down. Lovey-dovey text from a guy named Mark. Definitely not a just friends vibe. My heart sank. I confronted her the next morning, my hands shaking, holding her phone up like a piece of evidence. What's this? I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Her reaction? Not the guilt-ridden confession I expected. She was bold, unapologetic. I thought you'd understand, she said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to cheat on your husband a month after having his baby. Stunned doesn't even begin to cover how I felt, but I played it cool, nodded like I was okay with being betrayed. Inside, though, I was plotting my next move. There was no way I could let this slide. Not a chance. Gathering evidence became my new pastime. Screenshots, dates, times. I documented everything. It was meticulous, almost obsessive. But I needed that evidence bulletproof for what was coming. Filing for divorce and full custody of our child felt like declaring war. But what choice did I have? I couldn't let my kid grow up thinking this kind of betrayal was okay. Word got out fast. Whispers at the grocery store, pitying looks at work. She became the town pariah overnight. But the social fallout was just collateral damage in the grand scheme of things. This was about securing my child's future, ensuring they grew up in a stable, loving environment, not in the shadow of lies and deceit. So, there you have it. My seemingly perfect life. Up in flames because of a betrayal too big to ignore. But I'm not just going to roll over and take it. This is where I fight back, where I take control of the narrative. It's not going to be easy, but then again, nothing worth fighting forever is. Just when you think you've seen it all, life throws a curveball that knocks you off your feet. And let me tell you, this curveball was a doozy. There I was, knee-deep in the mess my wife made, bracing for a custody battle that would decide my kid's future. That's when the unexpected happened. My wife, ever the actress, started her campaign to win back public favor. Social media posts, teary interviews, you name it. She played the victim so well you'd think she was auditioning for a role. I never wanted it to come to this. She'd sob to anyone who'd listen, painting me as the villain of her tragic story. It made my blood boil. But just when I thought I was fighting this battle solo, an unexpected ally stepped into the fray. A figure from her past, someone I'd never even heard of, reached out to me. I've got something you might want to see, they said, voice cloaked in mystery over a burner phone. My curiosity piqued. I agreed to meet. We struck a deal in the shadows of a rundown coffee shop, away from prying eyes. This person handed over a stack of emails and photos that painted a very different picture of my soon-to-be ex-wife. It was the ammunition I needed to tip the scales in my favor. What do you want in return? I asked, wary of their motives. Just to see justice served, they replied, slipping into the night as mysteriously as they had appeared. Armed with new evidence, I marched into court, ready for the fight of my life. The custody battle began with the usual legal fanfare, but I could see the worry in my wife's eyes as she glanced at my lawyer's hefty file. She knew I had something up my sleeve. Then, in a twist worthy of a soap opera, her lover, the cause of all this drama, abandoned ship. Fearing his dirty laundry would be aired in court, he vanished, leaving her to fend for herself. The revelation of his true colors in court was a spectacle. My wife's face went pale as her calls went unanswered, her lifeline cut. But the real shocker came when a close friend of hers took the stand, on my behalf. She's not the person she pretends to be, the friend testified, recounting incidents that painted a starkly different picture of my wife's character. The courtroom was silent, hanging on every word. The turning point came when the judge, after what felt like an eternity, awarded me full custody. Irresponsible and unstable were the words used to describe her. As the gavel came down, sealing my victory. A wave of relief washed over me. But it wasn't without a twinge of sadness for the family we could have been. Walking out of that courtroom, I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter. My kid's future was secure, but the battle scars were deep. The fight for custody was over, but the journey to heal was just starting. As for my wife, her web of lies had unraveled for all to see. She lost more than just the case that day. She lost any chance of sympathy for me or the public. That night, as I tucked my kid into bed, I promised to make our future bright, no matter the storms we'd weathered. And somewhere in the shadows, a mysterious ally disappeared back into their world, having changed the course of mine forever. You'd think winning would feel better, right? That's what I thought, standing there. A man vindicated yet hollowed out by the ordeal. The dust had settled, leaving my world unrecognizable. This chapter of my life, one I never asked to write, was filled with legal battles, emotional warfare, and the kind of betrayal you can't scrub clean. But here's how it all went down. The descent into despair wasn't just a phrase, it was my wife's new reality. Once the life of every party, she found herself in a void of isolation. The friends that once rallied around her vanished into thin air, much like her lover when the going got tough. Her attempts to play the victim fell on deaf ears. The community's sympathy was all spent, leaving her to wade through the aftermath alone. It was a hard pill to swallow, watching her unravel, knowing there was no going back to the way things were. Then came the final confrontation. I remember it clear as day. She stood there on our once shared doorstep, a shadow of the woman I married. "Can we just talk?" she pleaded, her voice cracking under the weight of her choices. There was desperation in her eyes, a stark contrast to the defiance she once showed. She was asking for forgiveness, for a chance to be in our child's life, to play the role she'd so carelessly tossed aside. I wish I could tell you I caved, that I saw the mother of my child and not the woman who tore our world apart. But life isn't a fairy tale. "You made your choice," I said, the finality in my voice more for me than for her. "I can't trust you, not after everything. Our kid deserves stability, a life without constant chaos." It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, turning her away, but it was necessary. Necessary for healing, for moving forward. The wife's downfall was a slow, painful spectacle. Her life, once filled with love and laughter, crumbled to ruins. It wasn't just about losing the custody battle or the public humiliation. It was the realization that she had lost herself along the way. Her actions had consequences, ones that left her with nothing but regret and a slew of what ifs. But from the ashes of this catastrophe, new beginnings emerged. For me, it was a chance to rebuild, to focus on the one good thing that came out of this mess, my child. Their well-being became my mission, my purpose. It was time to leave the past behind and forge a path filled with hope, stability, and love. Something real and unwavering. As for the mysterious figure who tipped the scales in my favor, they vanished as quickly as they appeared. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a lingering presence, a reminder of the strange twists of fate that can alter the course of our lives. Their departure left me with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. Who were they really? Perhaps some stones are better left unturned. In the quiet moments, I found myself reflecting on the concept of justice. Was it served? Perhaps, in the legal sense. But the emotional toll, the scars left on everyone involved, begged to question if anyone truly won. The cost of this ordeal was steep, paid in tears, broken trust, and the shattered pieces of what used to be a family. This chapter of my life, one marked by betrayal and battles, was finally closed. But as I looked into my child's eyes, I knew the story wasn't over. It was just beginning anew, with a promise of better days, lessons learned, and the strength found in the face of adversity. Here's to new beginnings, to finding peace amidst the chaos, and to the hope that the worst days are behind us, leaving only room for growth and happiness. One day, you're living a life that seems straight out of a feel-good movie, and the next, you're smack dab in the middle of a plot twist so intense, it could rival any thriller. That's my story, and I decided it was high time to share it, anonymously, of course. My hope? That someone out there might sidestep the landmines I stepped on. I took to the internet, pouring my heart and soul into a blog post. A cautionary tale, I called it. I laid it all out there. The betrayal, the legal battles, the pain, and the eventual victory, albeit a bittersweet one. I hit publish, sending my story into the vast digital unknown, not expecting much. But then, something incredible happened. The support was instantaneous and overwhelming. Messages flooded in, from strangers telling me they were moved, that my story gave them the courage to face their own battles, to stand up for what's right. Even folks in town, who'd watched the drama unfold from the sidelines, began to approach me, offering kind words and affirmations. It was as if I tapped into a well of solidarity I never knew existed. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It had become a beacon for others navigating their storms. Meanwhile, my wife was on a quest of her own, a quest for redemption and a new beginning. But the road was anything but smooth. Her attempts to reintegrate into the community, to rebuild what she'd so carelessly torn down, were met with cold shoulders and closed doors. Her actions had etched a narrative in people's minds that no amount of contrition could erase. She was learning the hard way that some bridges, once burnt, are beyond repair. Just when I thought I could finally turn the page, an anonymous message landed in my inbox, shrouded in mystery. "There's more to the story," it read, hinting at secrets about my wife's past that I hadn't even begun to uncover. My first instinct was to dig deeper, to uncover whatever was lurking in the shadows. But then I paused, realizing that some stones are better left unturned. My focus needed to be on the future, not the past. That decision marked the beginning of true closure. I was ready to close the chapter on my marriage, to move beyond the pain and the betrayal. My priority now was my child, ensuring their life was filled with love, stability, and happiness. Everything we'd been through made me doubly committed to that promise. As for my wife, there came a moment of profound introspection, a rare glimpse into the depth of her regret. She understood the magnitude of her mistakes, the irrevocable damage she'd caused. But the realization came too late. The time for amends had passed, leaving her to navigate the consequences of her actions alone. Looking ahead, I began to lay the groundwork for my child's future. I envisioned a life for them that was as far removed from the chaos of the past as possible. A life where they felt secure, loved, and valued, not just by me, but by the community that had shown us such incredible support. My experiences had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, resilience, and forgiveness. Lessons I intended to pass on to my child, hoping they'd forge their path with wisdom and grace, free from the shadows of our past. Just when you think the roller coaster of life couldn't get any more intense, it throws you for another loop. It's like being in the eye of the storm, watching as everything you thought was settled starts swirling around again. That's where I found myself, smack in the middle of what I hoped was the last chapter of this saga. First off, the legal aftermath. Just when my ex-wife thought she could start to rebuild, the legal system came knocking again. This time, it was about the consequences of her actions beyond our divorce and custody battle. There were talks of fraud, of hidden assets I didn't even know existed. Watching from the sidelines, I couldn't help but feel a pang of, what? Pity? Maybe. It was complicated. Then, there was the community's reaction. You could say it was a mixed bag, but mostly, people were cold. Her attempts to reintegrate, to find some semblance of her former social life, were met with a wall of silence. It was as if her actions had finally caught up with her, reflecting back the pain and chaos she'd caused. I heard whispers at the grocery store, saw the pointed looks. It was a mirror to her soul, and the reflection wasn't pretty. On my end, raising our child alone brought new challenges every day. Juggling work, parenthood, and the emotional toll of the past few years was no small feat, but whenever I felt like I was drowning, a hand would always pull me back up. My family, my friends, they were my rock, a solid foundation that made me realize I wasn't alone in this. Their support was unwavering, a stark contrast to the isolation on the other side of the battlefield. Then came her desperation. My ex-wife, in a bid to claw back some role in our child's life, launched a series of legal attempts to gain visitation rights. Each motion, each plea, was met with resistance from my end. Not out of spite, but out of a need to protect what was most precious. Our child deserved stability, not the whirlwind of inconsistency and turmoil that seemed to follow their mother. As these battles waged on, a harsh reality began to set in. The long-term implications of this ordeal on our child became clearer with each passing day. There would be questions, difficult ones, about why things turned out the way they did. Preparing for those conversations, for the moment when I'd have to explain the unexplainable, weighed heavily on me. It was a burden I wished on no one. In a last-ditch effort to turn the tide of public opinion, my ex-wife attempted a dramatic gesture. A public apology, a plea for understanding, streamed live for the world to see. But instead of winning back hearts, it backfired. Sympathy was in short supply, and the spectacle only served to deepen her isolation. Throughout all this, the solidarity amongst my friends and family was a beacon of light. They rallied around us, forming a tight-knit support network that was more family than anything else. Their presence was a constant reminder that no matter how tough the road, we wouldn't have to walk it alone. Their support was a stark contrast to the solitude that had become my ex-wife's shadow. Life has a funny way of showing you just how resilient you can be, especially when you're convinced you've hit rock bottom. After everything that's gone down, the betrayal, the custody battle, the whole 9 yards, I found myself standing at a crossroads. Instead of looking back at the wreckage, I started to see a path forward. A new hope, you could say. It wasn't about forgetting or pretending none of it happened. It was about focusing on the positives, the potential for a new beginning. For me, for my kid. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, my ex-wife was having a realization of her own. The full weight of her decisions finally hit her. Losing her child, our marriage crumbling to dust, her future looking nothing but bleak. I heard through the grapevine that the reality of her situation had settled in, and it wasn't pretty. She was facing a future she never envisioned, one without the two people who once meant the world to her. Back in my corner, the ordeal had brought me closer to those who stood by me through the storm. Friends, family, even acquaintances who became allies. Our bonds had strengthened, forging a new sense of family. It was these relationships that became my foundation, my support system. We were tighter than ever, a unit built on mutual respect, love, and the shared experience of having weathered a significant storm together. As for my ex-wife, her journey towards redemption was anything but smooth. She tried, in her own way, to make amends, to find some sort of redemption for her actions. But the bridges were burnt, and the damage done was too great for simple apologies to repair. Her struggle was a testament to the fact that some actions are indeed unforgivable to most, a hard lesson learned in the harshest of ways. Reflecting on everything, I realized the lessons this ordeal had taught me. Trust, integrity, the importance of a support system. These weren't just abstract concepts, but the very pillars of life that held me up when I was close to falling. I learned about the kind of strength that doesn't just come from within, but from the community and loved ones around you. It was these lessons that I vowed to carry forward, to never forget the road I traveled. The legal limbo my ex-wife found herself in was a constant reminder of the lasting consequences of her actions. Her battle wasn't just with me anymore, but with the choices she made. Choices that continued to ripple through her life, affecting everything and everyone she touched. It was a stark reminder that actions indeed have consequences, some more far-reaching than one could ever anticipate. But amidst the chaos, a new purpose emerged for me. Community outreach became a way to channel my experiences into something positive, to help others who might be navigating their storms. Sharing my story, offering support, providing a listening ear. It became my way of giving back, of turning my pain into purpose. It was through this outreach that I found a sense of healing, a way to move forward while helping others do the same. You never really know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. That's something I learned the hard way, through a storm that tore my world apart and left me standing in the aftermath, wondering what the hell to do next. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom, the only way left is up. That's where I found myself, at the dawn of a new chapter, ready to embrace whatever comes my way with open arms. While I was picking up the pieces, my ex-wife's spiral didn't seem to find its bottom. Each decision she made seemed to push her further into the abyss of isolation. It was like watching a ship sink slowly. You want to look away, but you can't. Her life became a cautionary tale of choices and consequences, a stark reminder that some paths lead to places from which it's almost impossible to return. In the midst of all this chaos, a strange thing happened. I became something I never expected, a beacon of hope for others. My story, my fight, my resilience in the face of adversity seemed to resonate with people. Friends, family, even strangers reached out, sharing their stories, seeking advice, or simply offering a word of thanks. It was humbling and a bit overwhelming to realize that by simply standing my ground, I'd inspired others. But my ex-wife, bless her heart, she made one last stand. A desperate attempt to claw her way back into the light, to mend what was broken. She tried to reach out, to apologize, to make amends. But some wounds are too deep, some bridges too charred to ever cross again. It was a painful realization for her, that moment of clarity when you see your reflection in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. For me, it was all about forging ahead. Creating a stable, loving environment for my child became my top priority. Every decision, every action was geared towards building a life that was as far removed from the past turmoil as possible. It wasn't easy, but then again, the best things in life seldom are. We found our rhythm, my kid and I, a duo against the world, finding joy in the simple things, healing together. As for my ex-wife, that moment of clarity hit her like a freight train. She saw, maybe for the first time, the full extent of her downfall. It was a moment filled with a mix of emotions, regret, sorrow, maybe even a hint of acceptance. It's one thing to know you've messed up, it's another to truly understand the impact of those mistakes. Looking towards the future, I realized it was undefined, a blank canvas waiting to be filled. But it held the promise of peace and happiness, a far cry from the chaos that once defined my life. I was ready to embrace whatever came my way, armed with lessons learned and a heart open to new possibilities. And so, as this chapter of my life draws to a close, I mark the end of an era. It's been a journey of pain, resilience, and ultimately, growth. Stepping into the future, I carry with me the hope and determination to build a life filled with happiness, for my child and for myself. As for my ex-wife, she's on her path, one that she must navigate on her own. This story, our story, ends with a powerful message about the repercussions of betrayal and the incredible strength found in overcoming adversity. Here's to new